Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today into a really challenging, pretty profound idea. How does faith respond when everything you have, your financial security, your physical health, your family, is just suddenly devastatingly lost? Our source material today is a single, quite powerful spiritual reflection. It's focused on finding worship in profound loss.
That's right. And our mission really is to take this reflection, which is centered on the biblical story of Job, and distill the core insights. How does genuine faith actually operate under maximum stress? The thematic thread running through the whole piece is, well, it's simple but tough. Worship in hardship.
And the context of the sermon this comes from is very intentional, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It was given in Taiwan, first day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, long weekend. Now, culturally, that's a time focused on reunion, on wellness, the whole round moon, reunited people tradition. And the preacher deliberately contrasts that societal expectation of ease and joy with the very real potential for intense personal suffering.
Yeah, whether that's crushing debt or sudden illness or some kind of family tragedy, it creates instant tension, doesn't it?
It really does.
The listener makes you question whether the faith you practice on the good days actually holds up when the world goes dark. And the entire discussion, like you said, pivots on Job's incredible, almost unbelievable confession after he learns he's lost literally everything.
That quote, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away, blessed be the name of the Lord." Just staggering.
It is. And to really get the power of that line, we have to grasp the sheer magnitude of Job's situation. He wasn't just wealthy. He was like the wealthiest man in the East. He didn't just lose some money. He lost his entire estate and all 10 of his children in one rapid sequence of calamities.
Just boom, boom, boom.
Exactly. And the source material really emphasizes this wasn't merely a personal test. It was an episode where, symbolically anyway, heaven and hell were waiting, watching to see what his reaction would be.
Wait, hang on. The source specifically says sorrow is normal, though. Because it's easy to read that verse and think Job was just, a robot instantly accepting doom.
That's a great point. No, he first expressed overwhelming, physically visible grief, tearing his robe, shaving his head. These were the traditional expected ways of mourning back then.
Okay, so the grief itself isn't the issue.
Precisely. The material deliberately points out that the initial expression of pain is valid, it's human. It even cites that Jesus wept. The process isn't about denying the reality of sorrow. It's about what you do after that initial natural reaction.
Right, and this is where it gets, really interesting, as you said. Job moved immediately from that profound physical grief straight into an act of worship. And his confession wasn't just like a spontaneous outburst. Our source material synthesizes it, right?
Yeah.
As this structurally profound statement of theological acceptance.
Exactly. It breaks down into 3 perspectives. It serves as this deep acknowledgement of reality past, future, and present. So first he was looking back to birth. He says, "Naked I came from my mother's womb."
Okay, this is the foundational idea. Everything Job owned, his huge flocks, his servants, his status, it was all a gift. He wasn't the owner, he was just a steward, someone merely managing assets for a limited time.
That immediately reframes any loss, doesn't it? It's not theft, it's more like returning something borrowed.
Perfectly put. And then he shifts that perspective to looking forward to death. He says, "Naked shall I return." This means returning to dust, or Mother Earth, essentially. And the realization is key. None of the material wealth he gained in his life could follow him beyond the grave.
So it strips the tragedy of its kind of eternal weight.
Right, and this sets the stage for the final pivot, looking up to God's sovereignty. That's the grand conclusion. The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. This perspective is what directly countered the spiritual opposition mentioned earlier. It was an act of honoring the divine authority as the ultimate giver and taker, regardless of how the loss actually happened. Okay, I hear the theological argument for Job's acceptance, but let me push back a bit. How does the source material justify that claim that God gives and takes away? Isn't that potentially a dangerous oversimplification of suffering? I mean, if God caused the disease or the economic crash, doesn't that make praising him really difficult, maybe even impossible for a lot of people?
That's a really important question, and the source is careful here. It doesn't seem to focus on the cause so much as the sovereignty, the ultimate authority. The theological claim isn't necessarily that God, micromanaged the attack on Job. It's more that No event, no matter how catastrophic, happens outside of his ultimate scope, his awareness, his permission, maybe. The question of why is just inevitable in a crisis. We all ask it. But the source material notes that pastors, well, they rarely have an absolute definitive answer to that specific question.
So the faith response isn't about getting intellectual clarity on the reason for the suffering.
No.
But rather, it's about a kind of stubborn trust in the nature of God.
Precisely. The fundamental response offered is that at the root, we believe God loves us. And that belief has to hold true, even when we absolutely do not understand the immediate reason for the pain. It's an act of deep reverence over needing immediate comprehension. I mean, anyone can say, "Blessed be the Lord," when their stocks are up or things are going great.
Sure. Easy then.
Yeah, but it takes genuine, maybe even radical faith to say it in the midst of crushing affliction without falling into cynicism or complaint.
Okay, let's talk about the flip side for a moment. The source implies there are common, unproductive ways people handle tragedy today. If Job's response, this immediate worship and submission, is the template for genuine faith and reverence, what are some of those common behaviors he actively avoided?
That's a critical point for applying this, right? Job's response was immediate worship, submission, and that self-reflection we talked about, naked I came, naked I return.
Yeah.
He avoided what we see so often. For instance, one common unproductive response is probably external blame and litigation. He didn't blame the Sabians who stole his oxen or the lightning or the wind or even his wife later on when she suggested cursing God. He looked upward first.
That's a huge difference from today. I mean, the immediate instinct now is often to find who or what is at fault, the government, a company, another person, and hold them accountable.
Exactly. Another unproductive response he avoided was maybe cynical withdrawal. When tragedy hits, many people retreat, spiritually, socially, economically. They just shut down the part of their lives that got hurt.
It makes sense. Protect yourself.
It does, but Job didn't start practicing his faith. He actually doubled down immediately with that act of worship. And maybe a third unproductive response would be demanding transactional justice. Saying, look, I was a good person, I did all the right things, therefore I deserve good outcomes. God owes me an explanation and needs to fix this right now.
Right, the deal was broken.
Yeah. Job accepted the loss without those conditions, at least initially in this confession.
That distinction between acceptance and those other reactions is really key. And speaking of putting that acceptance into brutal, immediate practice, the source material then offers this incredible, real-world counterpoint. It pivots from the abstract theology to a deeply personal, multi-generational family history.
Yes, and what's fascinating here is how the source links this theological concept, this radical immediate submission, directly to the family roots of the host. It traces back to the very first generation of students of Dr. George Leslie Mackay, who was a really pivotal figure in early Taiwanese church history. So this isn't just theory, it's like a tested historical legacy.
Right, this is the Lee family story, which is just, it's devastating. The grandparents had immense hopes pinned on their third maternal uncle. He's described as the most gifted son best speaker, tall, full of natural grace. They chose him specifically to attend Taiwan Theological College, dedicating him fully to ministry.
That's a huge investment, right? Financially, emotionally, for the whole family.
Absolutely. And then the tragedy strikes. Right before his 6th year, literally on the cusp of graduation and fulfilling all those hopes, he died suddenly from a serious illness.
Just like that, all the dedication, all the investment, all the expectation of this family standard bearer completely wiped out in one event.
Yet their response,
Yeah.
it just perfectly mirrored Job's confession. The source says the grandparents recognized the child was a gift given by God, and they concluded that God taking him back must have had a purpose, a good intention, even if they couldn't possibly understand it. They didn't lose faith, they didn't get bitter or cynical.
And it wasn't just passive acceptance either. Their response represented a complete, spiritual paradigm shift, a dedication to spiritual reinvestment. The grandmother made this astonishing statement. She said, although they lost one child to illness, they would, quote, make up for it with 4 children becoming ministers.
Wow. Make up for it with 4. That's profound. They chose to answer loss not by retreating, but by actually increasing their output, their dedication.
They didn't just compensate, they compounded their faith output, you could say.
Yeah.
And that commitment was immediate. They sent the 6th child, the 4th child, and the youngest uncle all to seminary, and the 2nd son became a lay preacher, a beast. They made sure 4 people stepped into service to, in their minds, replace the one they lost. And that lineage continued. All 4 served until they safely retired, fulfilling this multi-generational commitment born from tragedy.
And that heritage, according to the source, continues right up to the present day. The host's niece, his third sister's child, is currently studying abroad, aiming for final qualifications, maybe even a doctor of theology. It keeps that family tradition of service going despite generational setbacks. It feels like the ultimate real-world proof that this kind of faith answers loss with renewed dedication.
So yeah, what does this all mean when we wrap it up? The core insight from this deep dive, I think, is that true submission, the kind Job showed, the kind the Lee family showed, it's rooted in reverence, a deep awe and respect for God's sovereignty. And this reverence is what allows you to respond to hardship, whether it's economic uncertainty, personal tragedy, whatever it is, by stating that the giver and taker is always worthy of praise, even when the why is completely, utterly incomprehensible.
That Lee family anecdote really drives it home. That commitment to, you called it, aggressive spiritual reinvestment when facing immense personal loss. Now, most of us, we may not be sending multiple children to seminary, but how might applying that principle of worship and hardship look different in your own life? Maybe in your career setbacks or financial challenges or relationship difficulties. Where do you or could you increase your dedication when you feel like you've been emptied out?
And that leads to one final thought. If we accept Job's example as, well, reasonable, and the Lee family's response as this powerful template for true reverence, it raises a final, maybe provocative question. Given that crisis is, let's face it, inevitable for all of us at some point, what daily habits or mental disciplines must someone cultivate before the disaster hits? What do you need to practice now to ensure that your immediate gut-level response then is based on that foundational reverence and faith, rather than just immediate reaction and complaint? That preparation, maybe that's where the real work of worship happens, long before the hardship arrives.